Hi there, I'm Lillian. Welcome to my channel. Here I talk about what it's like to wake up one day and find yourself in a real nightmare. You discover you're married to a covert narcissist. How I was baited through love bombing, trapped by a trauma bond, and stuck in blindness, unable to tell the difference between abuse and love for 34 years. Here I share my journey of how healing my feminine heart was the key to everything. I started to understand God in a whole new way, and His Word spoke to my heart in a way I didn't know it could. I learned to understand myself better and why I struggled with self-confidence and why predators were always drawn to me. But the most significant revelation was that a healed feminine heart can drive away darkness with light. So today I want to talk about boundaries, but in a way, as a Christian woman, you've probably never heard, especially if you've been living inside a marriage filled with intimate abuse and your feminine heart is unhealed. I want to show you what it looks like to walk away mentally and emotionally from a relationship that's actually not really a relationship without leaving the marriage. I want you to just begin to see how you can stop pretending and finally accept that your suspicions might be true. You don't have a normal, good, fulfilling, and healthy marriage. You're part of something that's the opposite of a healthy and safe marriage. I want to show you that the only way that you can function in this thing that's masquerading like a marriage is to lean back away from what is repeatedly hurting you and lean in towards God and let Him heal you. Walking away without leaving means you're going to adjust your life in the marriage to a state of low contact. It means focusing on realigning with God's Word in a feminine heart instead of a masculine understanding, and letting go of the responsibility of the masculine headship. Ecclesiastes 3 says there's an occasion for everything and a time for every activity under heaven. We can use the wisdom found here to help us understand a masculine and feminine polarity in relationship. There's two different couplets here that capture a dynamic that can be applied for feminine embodiment. Verse 3 says, "There's a time to kill and tear down, as well as a time to heal and build." And verse 7 says, "There's a time to tear and be silent, as well as a time to sew together and communicate." God doesn't allow us to walk away from a difficult marriage if you're married to another believer. The whole purpose that He created a one-flesh marriage between the two of you is so that you'll represent the church for Him. Now, if you're married to a wolf, and this is so important to understand, you're not in a true godly marriage. You are in something, but it's not a marriage. God is not creating a one-flesh relationship between darkness and light. That would be against His own word, 2 Corinthians 6:14. A sheep and a wolf can't represent the dynamic of Christ and the church. And if you begin to heal and understand your feminine heart, these truths found in Ecclesiastes 3 are going to do one of two things. They'll either help a true one-flesh relationship heal and become stronger, because as the feminine heals, that is naturally what happens in a couple. Or it will reveal that you're married to a wolf. You'll heal and become more you, and he'll become more himself. He'll get meaner and more toxic and more dangerous. There's a course of action you can take to help you see clearer. You need to walk away without leaving. And how you embody this process depends on you and the position you're in, your unique captivity. All domestic violence lands on the wheel of power and control, and it's always devolving into worse, because that's what happens when you're married to a wolf. If you're married to a covert narcissist, you are on this wheel somewhere. Obviously, if he's crossed over into that outer circle of physical violence, that means he's just not covert anymore. When a man demonstrates his hatred towards his wife through any kind of physical method, that is abuse. Whether it's infidelity towards the covenantal vow of the marriage, using another woman's body towards you, or attacking the relationship through your own physical body. You do need to heal and, of course, take steps to get out so that can happen, but there's nothing left to figure out. He has already revealed himself. There's no going back for you. Your only option is to physically walk away. If you can't see whether he's a dysfunctional husband or a dangerous man, that's proof you're unhealed. It's you that needs to do the work first. Walking away is about doing that work. You have to pull apart your dysfunctional feminine soul and allow God to show you where and how you need to be healed and restored. That's why I'll say it a few times. Walking away without leaving, it's not about the man. It's about you. And it seems like I'm saying that flippantly. I'm not. This method of low contact, it's the scariest and hardest thing to step forward into. It's a real, courageous act of faith. In 1 Peter 3, God says specifically to his daughters, do what is good without being intimidated by fear. When you're not intimidated by fear, that means you won't be tied to an outcome. What does it mean to be tied to an outcome? It means that you have an expectation of the way you want things to turn out, or there's a way you believe you know it will be or should turn out. Our outcomes are a direct link to our unmet needs, where God wants to heal and change and grow us. In a real simple way, pain points us to where we're going in the wrong direction. I kept trying to change and grow and be what I thought was my authentic self, but I kept failing because I was looking in the wrong place for growth and validation to happen. I was looking into my marriage for it to happen. This is wrong. This is so not the purpose of marriage when it comes to us females. I heard a husband once say that his wife is the instrument of his perfection, and it's true, when it comes to relationships. That's why when God says, when a man finds a wife, he finds a good thing. Proverbs 18:22. Have you ever considered what is that good thing? If you understand this verse to mean a man finds someone to help him on his journey on earth, or someone to pick up the slack of domestics for the kids and for him, then you're interpreting in the masculine. Being that good thing from Proverbs 18:22 is not about what she does in her role as a wife. Any woman or maid service can be that kind of good thing. A mother or sister or grandmother can do them. In that interpretation, there's nothing special or good about a wife. Any woman can fill that domestic role. A man doesn't even have to get married to have that kind of good thing in his life. All he has to do is hire domestic help. When you think and you understand in a feminine embodiment, you see that the good thing that God's talking about here is her femininity, when it's in relationship with masculinity. The good thing is the harmonizing of male to female, and in that harmonizing, it's the feminine's responsibility. That's why I say you must go first. You must heal first. You are that responsibility from God. You know how we understand that God is love? Not that God is loving or God does loving, but it's what he is. It's that way with feminine responsibility. We don't do femininity or act in feminine things or in feminine ways. It's what we are. You notice that God does not make in equal comparison that a woman finds a good thing when she finds a husband, because she doesn't. That's not what marriage is for her. Everything is different between the masculine and the feminine. It's intentional and purposeful by our Creator. In that couplet from Ecclesiastes, when God says there's a time to kill and tear down and be silent, this is how the feminine tears down wrong thoughts and ideas and strongholds in her life. 2 Corinthians 10, 3-5. Do you think this verse just means getting saved, like conversion, or learning the right theology? It doesn't. God's in the business of saving you. That's salvation or conversion from unbelief, so that He can heal you. That's the sanctification. So, in turn, you'll fulfill the plan He created for you to build His kingdom. Saving and sanctifying is that process of tearing down everything you believe in your whole life that's not truth. Lies you believe about God and the lies Satan has gotten you to believe about yourself. All of my understanding about these two verses in 2 Corinthians 10 said that God wants to take away the evil I do, evil strongholds that I do to others. And yes, that's true, but that's not the whole truth. Before God will do that, He will give you the tools to do it. First, by healing you, and that means demolishing the stronghold of lies about you, the arguments about you, and all the wrong things that you believe about God, so that you're able to fight in that spiritual battle. Like any soldier in war, you can't be expected to continue to fight when you're unhealed and wounded. They take you off the battlefield and they heal you before they send you back out. And that's what God does too. All that has nothing to do with your husband, as much as it appears like it does. Your war, like every other true believer, is against Satan, the father of lies. Once God has demolished and torn down all the lies and deception you believe about yourself, Him, and the world, then He will begin what Ecclesiastes calls the time to heal, build, and sew together and communicate. If you're married to a sheep and not a wolf. So in 1 Peter 3, when God says that your husband may be changed without a word from you, we just glaze over that and we miss a really big reality of the word maybe. Because if a man may be won or changed, the alternative is also true. He may not be won or changed. This is the dividing line between a sheep and a wolf. And the Lord doesn't need you to do anything except step away and lean back from the man and into God, so that you can focus on your own healing and your own growth in truth. God will reveal the sheep or the wolf to you. He's the one that rebuilds the marriage. And your husband will cooperate if he's a sheep. If he's a wolf, obviously there will be no getting a better marriage. It will only continue to get worse. Shifting into relationally low contact without leaving the marriage is a feminine power move, not magic. It seems like it because it's not a power move in the way worldly power moves. 2 Corinthians 10:4. It's not a power that forces another person. It's a power that allows exposure of another person. The more you take your hands off, metaphorically speaking, the more space you create for that exposure to surface. I can't stress this enough. This is about you and God, not your husband. First, you make the decision that you don't want to live this way anymore. You make the decision that you want to realign with God. And you decide and accept that this decision is going to cause some reshaping between you and your husband, whether that be good reshaping or bad reshaping. It'll be up to God. Healed femininity is God's power move, not yours. It's not a big, splashy, or complicated announcement that you make. It's a small, almost imperceptible shift. But that doesn't mean it's not a really scary decision. It does require you to do it afraid. It's your first step into the reality of how God designed you as a feminine creature. Femininity's job in marriage, her main purpose, is to reflect the truth about the one flesh relationship. And therefore, even though it's not about your husband, it includes him, and that's what makes it scary. You are going to embark on the journey of the neged you were created to be in Genesis 2. Your inner girl, your stature, is going to change as you heal. You make the decision to stop lying to yourself and to God and to your husband about who you are and how you feel. You'll be conquering lies with truth. You'll stop reflecting something when nothing is being received. God didn't design the feminine creature for her to create something out of nothing. Masculinity is created as a creator. Femininity is created to embody. 1 Corinthians 11:7. A man creates seeds, right? A woman already has the eggs inside her. She doesn't create them. You won't be reflecting good anymore when you are receiving bad. Genesis 2:18-22. The woman was created as the neged, positionally in front of the man. And you live out this truth in the Hina principle from Ephesians 5:33. God tells us, when your husband loves you like his own body, his love will penetrate your heart. He's in the creating posture. Then respect is the natural growth from that action towards you. You will reflect back to him whatever it is that he has planted inside of you. When your feminine heart is healed, it will do exactly what your feminine body does. She takes what is planted inside of her and manifests it. When there's no love being planted in you, you cannot grow respect out of nothing, any more than you can manifest a baby without sperm entering your body. You cannot produce figs from thistles or grapes from thorn bushes. You are about to stop receiving thistles and thorn bushes and pretending they're figs and grapes. A wolf pretending to be a husband will not like that. You make this decision by letting go of your expectations on the man for the relationship. This will allow truth to emerge through the lie you've been telling yourself. Your head knows you're married and not alone, but your inner girl is lonely because there's no connection of relationship. There's no love coming towards your heart that you can receive and feel entering into you. You thought there was. He said there was. But now after a few years, what you see and hear are completely incongruent to the way you feel. Your heart and soul are deeply connected to your physical body, and she knows she should be receiving something, some raw material to experience, because deep inside, you do know who you are. God has planted that inside of you with the knowledge of himself. And you know that you can't manifest, which is who God created you to be, unless you receive something from masculinity. And that's why the loneliness inside of you is excruciatingly painful. So what we do is we try and cover up the pain and hide the nothingness through make-believe. We take those thistles and thorn bushes and we try to convince our inner girl that she's receiving grapes and figs. And we force her to respond by covering up sin in hopes the pain goes away, or that someday there might be real love to reflect. Wishful thinking and living a lie is never the solution. truth always is. So, you're going to dial back the focus of whatever it is he's doing wrong or not doing right. The relationship is going to be put on pause. For all intent and purposes, you're now semi-single, alone. You're not leaving the marriage per se. You're leaving the relationship, but you're leaving it with God. You'll pause all the components of a relationship while simultaneously increasing your focus on the functional role of a wife. So, walking away without leaving is exposing the truth, bringing it out onto the table without talking about it. 1 Peter 3, right? One without a word. Metaphorically, you let the elephant in the room do the talking. Your nonverbal message will be much clearer and louder than anything you've probably already said. But you don't just step behind that elephant. You step out of the room, so the man is alone with the elephant and God. In this illustration, you can see that there's two distinctions within marriage. There are the roles of the husband and wife. They represent the covenant vow of a marriage. It's structured and black and white. The covenant vows are the same for every person who claims to be a Christian. These roles are not individualized at all. They're a job description for the function of every marriage that claims to be Christian. The marriage license is the same for every marriage. And inside this framework is where the life of the one flesh relationship between a man and a woman lives. This is the part where that sexy polarity between a masculine male and a feminine female is fleshed out to become one. It's where attraction is experienced. So the room you're stepping out of is that part, the part that's alive, and you're going to settle back into the covenant vow of the role called wife. And you're going to settle back until you're invited back into the relationship. Basically, you're recognizing and admitting that you've been living your married life wrong. The femininity that God gifted to you at your conception has been broken and is yet unhealed. And that's why you couldn't see that you were living your marriage wrong. He didn't create you as a broken woman. This is a part of your sanctification journey towards being that healed feminine creature. Stepping back out of the room doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow and gentle dialing back. It begins with that decision to lean away from the man towards God and removing all of your relational expectations from the man and giving them back to God. What this means is that you're going to redirect all your focus. The man doesn't owe you anything. You don't walk away in order to get results. That means you're looking for an outcome. Expectations in relationships, it makes you fake, not healed. Walking away isn't a tip or a trick or a technique to be strategized to get something you want. God won't allow it to happen that way. Your dissatisfaction with life is being revealed as an unhappy marriage, but in truth, it's God you're dissatisfied with. He tells us that in James 4. You ask and don't receive because you ask with wrong motives. I'm not pontificating here, and I know it sounds rough when I say it that way, but I can because it's my story. I was being abused, and the Lord was not answering my prayers to change my husband. He knew it, right? The Lord knew I was being abused, but I didn't know. So I didn't have the answer to my prayer because I wasn't asking for the right thing. I was asking with wrong motives. I was asking God to change the man who was hurting me. That's not what God wanted to do. He wanted to heal me so I could take care of myself His way. I just wanted a happy life with no more conflict, pain, and fighting. What I wanted in reality was that fairyland happily ever after. The point for God was not to fix the conflicts so that I'd have a happy life. The point of the conflicts were to allow me to see myself. Not my husband's wrongs. Now, here's where I might lose you. Just hang on, though. Because this is a watershed moment. We misunderstand the meaning of what it means to have a log in your eye. The log is your brokenness, not your actions that manifest because of the brokenness. The log is not just the sin you do. It's the sin done to you, and that's your broken heart. Christianity only interprets the log in your eye to be the sin that you do. They make no space for the sin that's been done to you. In other words, your brokenness that makes you a smoking wick or a bruised reed. They say that when you forgive, that's when you heal. That's a lie. That's works. If you do forgiveness as an act, you are healing yourself. And if you can just do forgiveness and then your feelings will come in line, you do not need Jesus Christ to heal from the breakage to your soul. Jesus made a way for you to get to the Father so that you can see what God is showing you. That part is what God wants to heal in you. That is what He was showing me. He wanted me to take the log out of my eye so that I could heal and be able to clearly see, and then I'd have no more gullibility. Healed hearts are not naive. They're shrewd and gentle, with a large capacity for forgiveness and compassion. You need to redirect your energy and focus. And God is using this dissatisfaction, unhappiness, and even pain to redirect your scope of vision to just Him and you. You see, you heal yourself, but only God can show you where that breakage is in your heart. And Jesus Christ made it possible for you to do that through the power of the Holy Spirit. The obvious pushback to this idea is, well, if I leave the relationship, isn't He just going to ignore me and be happy with me doing all the domestics and Him doing His own thing? If that's the case, you need to let that happen. Because the alternative to healing is more unhealthy living. Or, if you're married to a wolf, more toxic and dangerous living. That means you continue to nag and complain, which is completely exhausting. Am I right? You're trying to get him to do something he doesn't want to do or be. The alternative is to keep doing exactly what you've been doing. And it's sin for you to keep stepping out of the feminine position of the body into the masculine position of the head. It's the responsibility of the head to do all the work to love the body. It's not the responsibility of the body to force the head to love her so that she feels loved. Ephesians 5:28 and 29. Stepping back out of that room, dialing it back, leaves him alone in peace. You're giving him the space to be himself. If he's a sheep, he will figure it out. Because if he's a sheep, he'll turn to God, his Father. But if he's a wolf, when he turns to his father, Satan, your feminine healing marks the beginning of the end of your marriage, and it will get more toxic and more dangerous before he leaves. There's an important differentiation I want you to make here. When you said your wedding vows, you probably said something along the lines of, for better, for worse, right? No woman ever said, for better or for dangerously toxic. Worse is worse. If you've married a sheep, worse can get pretty worse. But if you've married a wolf, worse is not just the worse it can be. It's hidden abuse. How does the man respond to your feminine healing? That's your proof. God tells us that if we are Sarah's true daughters, we'll do what is right. without fear and trembling. He could have said, a true child of his, or a true child of God, or he could have said a true child of Abraham and Sarah's, but he didn't. He said daughter to be gender specific. That means in this instance, he's being explicit about femininity. You've probably been so focused on what the man is doing wrong in the relationship that you've lost yourself inside that man. Your life follows your thoughts. Whatever you think about most is where you go. You didn't want that, and it wasn't your intention, but that is what has happened. And God doesn't like anything taking our attention away from Him that way. And for marriage, He specifically warns us about that. In 1 Corinthians 7:34, He says, a wife is more concerned about how to please her husband than God. It's not an imperative. It's not a command. It's a warning to be careful about how you live inside of marriage. Watch yourself, not your husband, yourself. It's a slippery slope. I can guarantee if you're married to a wolf and not a sheep, he is the root of your thoughts. He is the end of your thoughts, and he is the middle of your thoughts. He's devouring your mind. You are more concerned about how to please a man than God. Until your brokenheartedness is healed, you cannot discover the truth of your femininity. It's impossible to have a rich and full life of your own, the one that God predestined you for, when you're consumed with focusing on someone else's predestination. What was it that lit you up before you met him? What were your routines and habits before you got married, before you had kids? Just you as the individual, autonomous person. Who were you before that man came into your life? What did you dream about doing when you weren't working? How did you fill your time? Were you able to fill your time? Did you like being alone? Did you enjoy your own company? Could you handle being alone? And what about childhood before adulthood? Did you have little girl hobbies? What do you remember? What feelings come with those specific memories? Can you describe how your day looks when you feel your best? Do you even remember what a best day looks like for you? And when was the last time you had one of those? When you feel inspired, where does that come from? And where does it push you towards? These are hard questions to ask yourself. They don't feel right or good, do they? We've been so conditioned to believe that it's selfish or self-centered or conceited, even though the Lord says introspection is vital for kingdom building. We're being deceived by human instruction and religious tradition about marriage. The harder question is, whose face came into clarity when you thought of your best day or being inspired? That's worth some thought right there. This beginning stage is super hard, and you're going to feel a lot of resistance from your flesh. You're going to see who or what sits between you and God, and that is scary. Now, when I said the words resistance from your flesh, it didn't make sense, right? Because we only interpret the word flesh like it's only sin that we do. And it does mean that, but it also means our humanity. And that's our soul that houses all your human feelings and emotions. You're going to get resistance because your emotions have worked very, very hard to cover up your brokenheartedness in order to keep you safe. I had given so much effort to my marriage that I had made it an idol. I gave more and more attention to how badly he treated me, and that became the goal of my life, to get him to change. All that focus and energy I had directed towards those idols were stealing my relationship with God. It's not that you never think about marriage or your relationship with your husband, but there has to be an order It has to be in proper alignment, and it has to be from a healed heart. If you're an unhealed smoking wick or that broken reed, you cannot put God first. That's what he was showing me. That's why there was dysfunction in my marriage. Because there was dysfunction in me. Now, you're not responsible for telling a man how to heal. He has to do that himself. And that's why you must do your own work, because that's what God will hold you accountable for, not how the man heals or doesn't heal. If you're married to a difficult man, a dysfunctional broken reed, like yourself, he will soul search and respond when you start to heal yourself. But if you're married to a wolf, that unhealed dysfunction inside your heart, that's what's keeping you in a dangerous position. And don't leave your husband in the dark. That's not loving or kind or responsible. You communicate the truth. It's not what you thought your marriage would look like. We've been married for 4 years, 5 years, or even 10 years, and I don't really feel the connection I thought I would feel after being together so long. I'm not sure what's wrong, but I don't feel like I like what we have. Make sure there's no blame here towards him. Nothing. This is about you. You are assuming full responsibility for your own happiness. Use the Bible. If he's a true believer, he will understand. He needs to know that you're going to begin taking responsibility for your own heart, your own healing, and your own happiness. Tell him that you've been putting that on him, and it's not fair. You're not looking for him to help you or heal you in any way. You're not looking for an answer right then. It's not a conversation. And you're certainly not looking for permission. Not anymore. It's the beginning of your self-expression to him. You want him to be aware that there's going to be some changes in you. And how he responds to you in this beginning stage is crucial for you to remain strong. You've just told him that things are going to change. You didn't say a lot or even what it was, just that some things were going to change. Tell him you're not leaving him and you don't want a divorce. But realistically, since you've been married for a few years, he's probably very aware of the problems between the two of you because he's also experiencing the stress. And you've talked about it probably many times. If he's a dysfunctional or a difficult guy, he'll probably withdraw, and he'll be thinking it's just another method for you to try and change him. Let him think that. Remember, it's not about him anymore. Yes, it affects him in a big way, but what you really want for him to know is that you're stopping trying to change him, that you're the one who's going to change. He won't understand what this means yet because you don't even know. What you do know is that you need to heal, and God wants to do that healing in you. If he's a wolf, he's going to get angry. Probably not right in the moment, but shortly after. Depending on how long you've been married and how toxic he is, every situation of abuse is different. It's going to be awkward and scary. Let those feelings come and don't shy away from them. This is part of grown-up relationships. They are, oh, so awkward because the words don't feel secure coming out of your mouth. It's not the sphere you're used to being in. It's all new. But this is the only path to change. It's the only way to make that first step into a boundaried female. A woman who's healing and developing and maturing into a Christ-like creature. Okay, so you're not going to be living for a marriage of happily ever after anymore, because that's not the reason God gave us marriage. Obviously, it's not that all the different facets of marriage don't matter. They do. But they have to matter appropriately in healthy balance. And second, you must stop assuming it's your responsibility to make that happen. It's masculinity that's the head in the relationship. He initiates everything. Femininity gauges the environment. She reflects and responds. She doesn't steer with reins of control. God showed me a vision one time of Dean standing facing me, which is interesting because at the time, now that I think of it, I didn't know about the neged. I hadn't learned that positionally the neged's a reflector in front of the man. I guess it's probably because God wanted me to focus on the reins in my hand. When I say reins, I mean reins like you use when you ride a horse. I'm an equine woman and was involved with horses most of my childhood when I was younger, and that's probably why God showed me that image. So in this vision, my ex-husband was standing in front of me, and I looked down at my hands where I was squeezing those reins, and I heard the Lord say, "Drop them." So I just opened my hands and they slipped to the floor, and the vision was over. And that vision came to my mind numerous times in that season. It was like a repeating dream. But particularly the next time that I was baited into a fight, it went through the normal pattern, fight and Darvo. But for some reason, I did not take all the blame. I took responsibility for my part, but I made a point of leaving a bit of his part sort of hanging out in no man's land. And as I was laying in bed that night, the Lord showed me the same vision of us facing each other, the same repeated vision I had had numerous times. But this time, Dean bent down and roughly grabbed the reins off the floor and jammed them into my hands. I looked up at him in the vision, and he had this angry look on his face. He was really close to me and towering over me, looking down at me. He's considerably bigger than me. I could feel a decision welling up inside me, and this is the juicy part. 1 Peter 3:6. Would I continue to do wrong out of fear? Would I accept the reins back into my hands and continue to follow this man's lack of responsibility for headship? Or would I choose God's way and do it right? So, still in this vision after the fight, laying in bed, I looked up at him straight in the eyes, and I slowly opened my hands and let the reins slip to the ground. He picked them up, and this time his teeth were gritted, and he tried to jam them into my hands again. I just let them fall again, and the vision was over, and I never saw it again. For the masculine and feminine one-flesh relationship to work the way God intended it to, you have got to drop the reins of responsibility. Drop them instead of trying to put them in your husband's hands or allowing him to put them in your hands. Your feminine heart has been suffering because of lack of knowledge. Hosea 4:6, and a misunderstood vision of marriage and relationship. Your mind has been unprotected, and your heart has been unguarded and emotionally unfed the way a woman needs to be taken care of by a shepherd. The leaders of Christianity have done evil towards you. They've conditioned you to take abuse instead of educating you with the knowledge that you need to defend and protect yourself. So now, God will rescue you and take care of you the same way He rescued me. Ezekiel 34. You need to find your vision for you. The vision that God created you for as a female. Knowledge is the first step to your healing. My vision began with stewardship of the time allotted to me for my life from God. That translated into an actionable process of inverting my schedule one step at a time. If you've been married for a while, you've been conditioned that it's your responsibility to manage the one-flesh relationship, all of it, to take full responsibility for it. So you need to stop all that management and the micromanaging that we women do. You need to fill up that time with other things. These other activities, hobbies, or whatever you choose. That's what's going to help you shift your vision outside of the relationship back to yourself. It's baby steps. Just choose one small activity. I made space to go visit a new friend instead of doing laundry first. That meant that I was not available to fill his time when he got home from work. I was busy doing the laundry and ironing. My job. Being available for a man without him having to work for your time is how you get taken advantage of, especially in marriage. If your husband is a dysfunctional one, he will feel it and figure it out. But if you're married to a wolf, he'll come against the idea that you have control over yourself, your own time, while he is at home. If you've been married for a while, that means you do have a sex life. No matter how broken it is, he's probably not working for it. Because he's under the impression, and so are you, that he's entitled to sex, which means you are enabling the prostitution of your body by your husband. When you're not receiving your due entitlement, which is the friendship component that precedes sex, you might not call it prostitution, but that's the dynamic that's being lived out. That's what Paul's talking about in 1 Corinthians 7:3, due benevolence. Let the husband render to the wife her due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto her husband. A husband and wife are both entitled to affection within a one-flesh relationship, but what is due to masculinity is very different than what's due to femininity. Paul's talking about intercourse for sure, because he tells us that right up front. But then he drills down on some specifics of it, and he starts with husbands first. This is key. He uses the word benevolence, which means kindness and goodwill. This is cleaving, and it always starts with the man. God never puts this responsibility on a woman when it comes to relationship. When he addresses wives first, it's always about the functional role in submission. It's never about relationship and sex. In all of the places, Colossians 3:18, Ephesians 5:22, 1 Peter 3. He always starts with addressing wives. Then he moves to addressing husbands. Yet, here in 1 Corinthians 7 is where God makes the only exception, because he's talking about sex. When you have sex without relationship, that's what prostitutes do. Sex isn't an isolated function performed in a vacuum. Just because you're married, this doesn't give the man access to your mind, heart, or your body ad libitum. But that's what Christianity teaches wives to do in marriage. Sex is the natural manifestation of a healthy romantic relationship. Not perfect, healthy. In a marriage without relationship, sex is merely an exchange of services that's void of truly being seen and known. And my guess is that this exchange of services and lack of connection just doesn't feel good to your feminine heart anymore. There's a destructive view of marriage and sex. The message is that a man cleaves in order to get married, and then he doesn't have to work at the relationship anymore after the wedding day. That cleaving is somehow concluded by the act of matrimony. So he says yes once on the wedding day, and that one time entitles him to free access to sex. The masculine translation interprets due benevolence as a euphemism for only sex. If that's the whole truth, that puts an unnatural and even sinful expectation on a wife to say yes to sex, regardless of how she feels, for the rest of her marriage. In order to carry that off, it means that she's got to deny the God-given hormonal signals from her own body that creates the desire for sex. Femininity requires something from masculinity in order to desire him. This benevolence must precede sex. That's why Paul addresses husbands first when it comes to do benevolence. A woman has zero desire for a man to enter into her unless her estrogen levels almost quadruple in his presence. Unless that happens, sex becomes just another chore for her to complete on her to-do list. It's not a choice. A woman can't just get in the mood. A man can. It's not a choice for us. It's the way God designed the female body to work. You know what? If you've decided that you don't like feeling like a prostitute anymore, simply stop doing it. Stop faking. It doesn't matter how long you've been living inside that pattern, deceiving your own body. There's never a wrong time to start living in authentic truth. But you know, there are things you have to do without feeling like you want to do it when you're married, right? Do you need to feel like cooking supper? No, that's a function. Do you need to feel like going to work? No, that's a function. Do you need to feel like cleaning the house? No, that's a function. Do you need to feel like waking up in the middle of the night to feed a baby or change a diaper or sit up with a sick child? No, these are functions that end with dependent children. Functions are tasks that you agree to carry out. Relationship is not an obligation to be fulfilled like a task. It's a journey to be experienced. Sex is not a duty or a function performed from within the role of a wife like a domestic job. Sex is the culmination in the one flesh relationship. It's the highest level of friendship you arrive at when a romantic relationship is cultivated. So please stop believing the rhetoric that says you're withholding sex if you don't do it regardless of how you feel. That is a masculine interpretation. It's not how a woman experiences sexuality. Instead, you're going to start living in truth by authentically honoring how you feel. In this way, you will truly be a helper to the man. You won't be enabling laziness anymore. God says, if a man doesn't work, neither shall he eat. Do you think that's just for laziness with career or a job or work? Is that God's modus operandi? He only ever has one application for his precepts? Or is it just maybe that when a man works for something, for anything, it causes deeper appreciation and responsibility and ownership for whatever that thing is? Maybe even loving his wife like his own body? Is it possible that complete responsibility is in keeping with the design and purpose of masculinity? Knowledge is key for you. Learn the difference between doing the role of a wife and being in relationship with a man. And learn about your biology and hormones. Research and understand yourself. What makes your estrogen-laden body so different from a man that's full of testosterone? And learn to feel your feelings. Study them. They are you. Get reacquainted with who you are by what you feel, where they come from, and why you feel them the way that you do. When the feeling emerged, who were you listening to? Or what were you watching? What was a particular sound or smell? The olfactory sense factors in largely in regard to triggers and memories. Learn what evokes those feelings and emotions inside of you, and allow yourself to learn them by letting them surface. Articulate them with words that maybe you've never uttered, and maybe verbalizing them to someone if you can, someone who's safe. And even if you don't have anyone safe right now, journal them. It's almost as good. Get used to hearing your feelings articulated in your own voice. Your voice is beautiful. The Lord handpicked that one for you. Practice saying them in front of the mirror so you can watch your mouth form the words that convey your deepest feelings. It's these practices of giving your inner girl back her voice. They'll allow you to feel what emotions fit for you. Using feelings and words will put you in touch with using more and more of them. Trust me, you'll know when you find you in those words. You know when you shop for a particular blouse or top, no one can tell you what you're looking for, am I right? You try on 10 or even 15. You find it by trying the others on. Stepping out of the relationship is about slow, gradual feminine change and growth. It's about becoming your best self. It's not an ultimatum deal for the man. This is about your healing, your relationship with God, not changing the man. What you're doing is coming in line with who the man already is and living that way, authentically, honestly, and in truth. What this does is reveal who he is. You're done trying to control him by putting those reins in his hands, even if you know it's his responsibility. You accept that he doesn't want them. You stop nagging, coaching, encouraging, and fighting about it. You're done. Accepting his behavior, it doesn't mean that you're going to receive it. They are two different things. If you feel bad or hurt by anything he says or does, or doesn't do or say, you're now going to be living in the acknowledgement that he is a grown man and he can choose to be who he wants to be, and you will accept him as a person. And that means you accept that he has the right to choose his behavior. You have the same free choice to not receive into yourself words or actions that don't make you feel good, or words or actions that don't encourage you to be your best godly self. This is what your relational absence communicates to him. It's a boundary. Closing thoughts. First, shh. Don't say a word about this to him. Discovering that your husband's dangerous is a scary place to end up. It's never where you thought you'd be, and it feels like an unreality. But your silence about your awareness of what he really is, that's your safety zone. And always remember, a clueless guy that causes dysfunction and seems difficult, he's not dangerous. But the malignant man is not clueless. He just pretends to be difficult and dysfunctional so that he can hide how dangerous he is.